So welcome everybody. I'm very happy to host this very last session of the ADF 2025. And since we had here in Athens a lot of information about different topics such as democracy, threats to democracy in various forms, and information integrity, AI, the problems of how do we manage trust in our society, and yeah, we had very, very rich 3 days, and I thank everybody of the ADF to host this session. So I'm the founder and director of the Young Security Conference, which is an intergenerational think tank based in Munich to facilitate dialogue in a long-lasting network about security policy and foreign affairs of the European Union with a transatlantic angle, and also regarding the Franco-German relationship. And I'm very happy to host and have my wonderful colleague here, Elena, from the IYTT, the International Youth Think Tank, that already presented today here at the ADF a little bit what they do, also amazing work. And since we also talked a lot about how important youth is for democracy, I'm really happy that we both can a little bit lead through this deliberative session. And so the topic, as you have already seen, is what makes us feel safe today. And so we will have 1 hour until 6 o'clock to talk a little bit about 3 different pillars, so external and internal security, democratic resilience and trust. And the major question that leads us through this debate, that we will also give you here in Athens to deliberate about, is a little bit how global challenges and national policies and institutional trust shape our personal sense of security and safety today and tomorrow. So obviously, this is connected to what really truly matters to us citizens. And my first question goes to you, Elena. So what are you worried about? How do you see risk today for you personally?
So I guess as a young citizen that has just finished university or is finishing university, etc. I think risk for me takes many shapes. I think I have developed a very strong sense of climate risk, for example, or recently as a European citizen I have developed a strong sense also of risk related to conflict as a consequence of the war in Ukraine. But as a citizen, I am also perceiving the risk of, for example, being unable to find employment, so more of a social side. So I think my perception of risk is multi-layered and comes from very different sources.
So we'll ask you here in the room as well how you feel about all these topics. We actually also did some preparations. So with the Athens Democracy Forum, we worked together with the ORBIS platform. So a little short presentation about what they do. So it is an online platform that does surveys. And there were also people who replied to the questions of what is most important for you in terms of safety. The most important people expressed, and the most important agreements here were that people don't trust politics anymore, and that security systems do not work, and housing. So the 3 most important replies on ORBIS platform in terms of surveys were these 3 major concerns. So I will do a little introduction to a little bit present you some questions that you here may talk about in terms of security and risks and safety. We'll have a small group dialogue where you come together and can vote. Then we have a little collective harvest, and then we come back together have another group dialogue, and then we have a little reflection all together. Regarding the definitions, we all are aware that external and internal and external security are linked, obviously, in many ways, with democracy and trust. Elena, what do you think? How do you define security and democracy and trust?
So I think that external and internal security are sometimes can be misleading in a way. I feel like they are of course, well, I might say something balan, but they are interconnected, of course, and I think that with an ever more interconnected world, we cannot really keep them apart. At the same time, I feel like also democracy is becoming always more interconnected with security questions, and especially security discourses are becoming an important part of how our democracies are reacting to the shocks that they are undergoing in this phase of democratic backsliding. So I feel like security is, in a way, variable that we need to be aware of, and that sometimes is used against our democratic systems, while at the same time the systems themselves are facing security risks.
Yes, so you will have to express your opinions regarding these three pillars here in the room. So a little bit about trust. We've talked about trust a lot here at the ADF. When we look at trust in institutions, which is obviously connected with democratic backsliding, we see that trust in the EU actually averages 52%, while trust in national governments is lower at 39% across OECD countries. And in Greece, the gap is even wider, so we have 48% trust in the EU and only 30% trust in the government. So democratic resilience is obviously tied to institutional credibility. Here a little bit of data to a little bit give you some inspiration for your debates and the harvest. When we look at the international level, like trust in national government is really, really bad. So when we look at the majority of countries of the OECD, the majority of countries have more than 60 or around 50% very low or no trust in national governments. Obviously, many questions arise when we talk about what can we do about the fact that we are losing trust. A little fun fact here, so when we look at political figures and business and cultural, spiritual leaders as well, which is important for our individual safety and security, Donald Trump obviously is the first person around the world which has 57% of disapproval, which is followed by Vladimir Putin in Russia. And then we have Elon Musk, interestingly then Kim Kardashian. So we see a little bit how we perceive political figures nowadays in leadership. Then obviously the question of security and defense, what you just mentioned, we have a lot of concern obviously with the war in Ukraine and now with Gaza. About what kind of defense and security infrastructures do we want as Europeans today. And this conversation we did not have for a very, very long time. How much money are we willing to pay for our common security and defense policy of the European Union, which will require a lot of investments? And a lot of taxpayers' money. So we have some data, obviously, where we see naturally a lot of Europeans worry about security and defense. And more than 8 in 10 people support a common defense security policy. Regarding the perceptions of the EU as a security actor, It's also interesting that this varies among European countries. So we have, for example, a lot of countries that perceive the EU as a transatlantic geopolitical project that needs to increasingly provide its own security. So this is tied to strategic autonomy of the European Union in terms of security and defense. When we look at the current risk landscape, that's also interesting because at the World Economic Forum, they did the survey of 900 global risks experts, policymakers and industry leaders, and the top number one risk was state-based armed conflict, which is also a little bit logical. And then number 2 is climate change, extreme weather events, and then third, geo-economic confrontation. And then only 4th place is misinformation and disinformation. Elena, back to you. What do you think? How do you perceive these risks right now in your daily life?
So I think in my daily life, I'm not sure that I can pinpoint exactly each of these risks. I think that I perceive them mainly through the lens of information, and I think that it is very interesting to see the fact that extreme weather events, for example, are so high up, while I also have the sense that we are not having the conversations that we are supposed to be having in order to face these risks. And so I also recognize the fact that this is something generalized for me. I don't think that in general leaders are taking the steps that are needed in order to actually face things such as geoeconomic confrontation, extreme weather events, as I mentioned, and well, state-based armed conflict. I would even mention that. But I think I share the assessment that misinformation and disinformation are surprisingly low in this hierarchy. And I think it might also tell of how they are instrumentalized by a wide range of actors across the board. And so they are also a tool, not only a threat for some people.
That's also very important to keep in mind, not only the demand, but also the supply side, as you say, in political science or economy, how empowered we citizens are, and how do we feel with security and safety, and at the same time, we're always confronted with all these threats and risks. We have obviously also cybercrime, which is important. Over half of Europeans feel that they cannot adequately protect themselves against cybercrime, with 60% in Greece. When it comes to disinformation and the manipulation of information on online platforms, which is actually really interesting, is that in 2023, the data showed that the prevention of the spread of false and misleading information on online platforms is the highest concern among countries of the Eurobarometer. So it's really a question of prevention. And so now this is the turn of the people here sitting in the room to have a little dialogue. So we have a Slido here. We have like around, I would say, 10 minutes maybe to talk and to vote actually on Slido. So you can scan the QR code or you enter the number on slido.com when you finish your discussions. So we will do like a little word cloud, and then we will see what emerges at the end. What is the most important thing that matters to you today? You can pick 2 to 3 answers maximum per person. So see you in 10 minutes. As soon as we finish this first round, we can also continue. And then we'll have a collective harvesting in between of both polls. So we'll see a little bit your reactions regarding your expected results. But in any case, it's already interesting that after 3 days of intense talk about democracy and related aspects of democratic backsliding, we have peace and decent living that are really upvoted in this context. So much more important than truth or political extremism. And yes, so later on, you can also say something regarding, regarding your feeling of these results, like how you expect the outcomes to be. So it seems that everybody voted. Great. So yes, we have peace and decent living, the two top items of this first round of this poll. So now we have a little time to write down some related concepts and to talk about security and safety and democratic resilience. So you have paper on the tables you can write down and a little bit talk among yourselves in groups, deliberate about what are the differences also regarding the countries you come from, your background, and your professions. And we come back together in like around 10 minutes. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the time is over. The debate could continue for a long time, but now it's a little harvest, so we're interested what you wrote on your sheets, what are the most important 2 to 3 issues. So we'll pass the mic around, and you can just describe your 2 to 3 most important issues that emerged. Maybe we start with a big table here in front.
Okay, so I started a bit with our doubts when we started the discussion because we were not sure if security really, if turning this discussion in a security and defense and militarized discussion is so helpful for this topic. So this was one of our things that we discussed. Interestingly, it led rather immediately to the topic of migration that seems to be related to the security issue somehow and also affects our democracies and how well they work and the cohesion within our societies. But what we did put down as keywords, because I think this is what we should harvest, is trust, which came up very early and several times, and also trust between different parts of democracies, like the civic sector and the political actors, but also trust between different parts of the population, and the trust of young people in democracy. So there's many aspects to trust. Of course, I just need to see how I combine them. Internal security is, I think, enabling humans of safely participating in democracies and the daily political life. Then there was, as an internal security threat, attacks on your territorial integrity. So, people don't feel safe to engage and vote if their territory is attacked. Also, political stability was mentioned as an important factor. And disinformation as a major external security threat that we see in many European countries. And then you need a certain order and stability for marginalized and marginalized groups and lower income groups to be able to also engage. So society can only engage in political systems if there's order and stability that is guaranteed to a certain extent. Otherwise, only small parts of the population will be able to engage. I hope I summarized somewhat.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's great. Yeah, the next table? The well-structured table?
So we have some keywords for external security, ammunition expenses. That comes to mind for me as a Greek, you know, when I hear about external security. And you said like stronger, united, something very European. I mean, that we are stronger when you are united. Internal security, first thing that comes to my mind is social cohesion. Without social cohesion, you cannot have internal security. Decrease of drugs and lack of justice. And for them, decrease of drugs, I don't know, it's French apparently.
My English is not very... En français? No.
I can translate if you want.
I can also translate.
There's a lot that in France apparently
No,
there's
but yes, it's everywhere. In a small village, and it's invisible.
Yes.
And when there's craze and poverty and drugs grow up, and for a city mayor, and next year in France we have election in city council, and it's I think it's a real problem for the city and for cohesion in.
Good.
No, yeah, if you compare it with poverty, I mean, it's the first outgate for the young people, drugs. And for democratic resilience, we put participation, hope, trust in the system, and education.
Trust in the system. A lot of trust again. We've talked a lot about trust these days.
Yes, and again, probably it's in our country that people don't trust the system. They don't trust the politicians. They don't believe that justice works well and that protects the politicians, the deputies. You know, that something is happening underground and they are not part of it. And it's a system without them.
Yeah, thank you so much. Great. Table 2. We have one last table here. Do you want quickly, in half a minute, summarize your findings? Especially if you have different findings of the other tables.
Okay, so we were thinking mostly for Greece. The words that come in our mind for external security would be things of migration and border control, which nowadays has been a lot of incidents that show that these things are being in a weird, they are not controlled as people would want to. So we have some issues there. So that's what came to my mind first. About internal security, I just thought of law enforcement, which is something that...
Law enforcement?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you trust law enforcement and the rule of law?
Yeah, I think I saw it more generally that we have maybe people have issues there, people don't, people trust the law enforcement and people don't trust it. So it's some mixed feelings about it. That's why it came to my mind. And about democratic resilience, I was thinking of maybe corruption and transparency in things of the law, the media, and the general freedom of speech. So, yeah.
Also interesting because the others didn't mention freedom of speech really as a security and safety and a risk.
Yeah, in Greece it's kind of a mixed feelings about it.
Great. I mean, we don't unfortunately have too much time today because also this is the last session of the ADF, so we have to continue. And just to keep you alive, another Slido here. So if there's something that has changed in your thinking since your first dialogue, so the fact that you quickly exchanged with the others and international peers, did your urgency change? Maybe what are solutions or actions So yeah, let us know your 2 to 3 most urgent concerns and also solutions. And we come back together in 5 minutes maximum. Unfortunately, time is running out. We have 2 minutes left to save democracy, as we heard before. I would like to give 2 minutes per table to present a little bit your thoughts. Solutions, changes of perception, internal, external security, and democratic resilience and democratic backsliding. So I give the floor to my left table here.
Okay, can you hear me? Yep. So we had a discussion, and we think an example of how we can face many problems now is more democracy and more citizen participation, because when there is more participation and more discussion, even in a, for example, in a local level, we see often that also the polarization is less. So democracy is fragile, and more democracy can be a solution, not just vote once every 4 years, but also develop an agenda to improve deliberation and democracy in local levels and improve the participation of citizens in the democratic life of their municipality, their region, the country, and in general the decisions that are taken. We also discuss about transparency, because often a problem that we face in modern democracy is a lack of transparency of where the interests are, or for example, how the media are controlled. In general, there was some example in Greece that we discussed where there was a lack of transparency of how some problem were approached, like this incident with the train of a few years ago. So that's it.
So transparency and deliberation at the local level. Okay, big table here in front of me.
All right. We came back, we circled back to trust, interpersonal trust again on all levels. So this is really the key question for us. And we can increase it by listening to each other and also listening to experts who speak a language that can be understood by different audiences, because this enables more engagement, and we think that engagement decreases polarization and improves democratic exchange. We need to find a common language, because it seems like the people, the autocrats, they have common wordings for things. You know, what did we say? The deep state or the mainstream media, thank you. So they have those wordings, those strong wordings that everyone understands, but democracy is confusing. It is many different people saying many different things, different actors, and we need to find this common ground again to protect our democracies and institutions. There is a representation gap, clearly, for young people who say we don't feel represented, we don't trust a system that does not have representatives of our age or background, and that is also true for other groups, like marginalized groups, minorities. And then there was, we need to be very concrete, like the threats and topics we discussed became more concrete in the second round for us, not as confusing or wide they were in the beginning. We're becoming more concrete and circling closer around the topics.
That's good, yeah.
Absolute democracy could be also absolute chaos, so there needs to be some structure and some, you know, decision elements. That's a problem, yes. So absolute democracy can also be very chaotic. And it can be slow and messy and a mix of many different opinions where it is not clear which path to take. That is what has been mentioned in the whole round. It is not necessarily all my opinion, but yeah.
Great, very quickly.
Yeah, very
30
quickly.
seconds.
Yes, the interesting thing about this discussion was the point made about interpersonal trust and common language. That we came in the table thinking that we have that, but apparently not. So that's the only thing. Thank you.
Something that changed then. That's great.
So for us, the solution is politics. And since we started the discussion, two realizations. The first is that local politics are a bit blind on certain problems really in local levels, like drug trafficking again. So it's like some problems are under the radar for politicians. Violence is one of them that has become a sort of trend. And one of the realizations I would say we have as Greeks is that, by discussing with our friend from France, is that we are totally into lack of justice, lack trust to the system. We are constantly feeling that there is something wrong with the state, which is making us hopeless. Yeah, trust in the system that we don't have, and constantly this, that there is always there is an enemy somewhere in the state. And I realized that talking with other people, they don't have this feeling. It was mentioned before, the train crash that has created a source of a lot of lack of social cohesion, basically. That politicians are playing their own game and they are hiding constantly something from the citizens.
Okay, so blindness of local politics, violence, lack of justice, and lack of social cohesion. Right? So, yeah, that's, I mean, a little bit depressing at the end of the ADF 2025 to finish with these words. At the same time, we also mentioned some solutions. We have solutions, deliberation at local level, and increase of interpersonal trust. So in any case, I hope that we take all these inspirations and conversations back home tonight and to think about it, how we in our spheres as policy, as experts, as think tank leaders can a little bit bring our fair share to the table to improve these things. And maybe we have the chance to, contribute a little bit and fight against the democratic backsliding around the world happening. I wish you a very, very good evening, and I thank you so much for staying with us until 6 p.m. and the end of the ADF 2025.